Good evening and welcome to a new edition of To The Point. Allow me on behalf of myself and To The Point crew to wish you all a very happy Bayram. And this evening we'll be discussing the Decent Life Initiative. With me is a distinguished gentleman, Engineer Hassan Shaaban, who is the former Vice Chairman of Al Wafd Party and the Farmers Syndicate. First of all, let me wish you a very happy Bayram.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us.
Appreciate it.
And how does this initiative aims at developing 4,500 villages in Egypt? As the vice chairman of the Farmers Syndicate here, how does this feel? Rural Egypt being developed.
Actually, this is a very heavy task. Let me put it this way. The Egyptian farmer is suffering from a lot of problems, and finally there is somebody who's taken the initiative to improve the living conditions in the countryside in Egypt. Everybody is talking about, you know, the change that took place in the features of the Egyptian village, which is, it's a non-productive village. So, and everybody wants this village to come back to be a productive village and be able to support itself without really the aid of the state or anything else. So, the program that's being carried out right now, it's not really it's not aiming toward refurbishing houses or maybe paving roads and so forth, but it is a full program to develop the countryside, meaning started with the lining of the channels for, you know, that you know, carries the water to irrigate the land, which actually, yes, indeed, it might be expensive, but on the long run, it will save money because it will eliminate the seepage. This is number one. Number two, it will also eliminate the cost of dredging the canals, and, you know, because a lot of wasted water was due to, you know, sedimentation and plantation, the Ward Nil and so forth. So we started to do that, and we're moving toward, you know, upgrading the living conditions in the countryside.
Aside from the housing, the Decent Life Initiative is really addressing a number of issues. One of them is the medical, for example. The fact that every village has the right to have a nice, clean
clinic, yes,
clinic or a small even hospital.
Right.
How will this not only, because when you establish medical facilities, not only do you provide the service, but you also provide the jobs.
Indeed.
Major cities in Egypt have been suffering the burden of overpopulation due to the fact that people from the rural areas or the villages come
to the cities, yes,
to the big cities.
Right.
How will this help if you establish medical facilities? Will this encourage locals to stay back home?
Definitely, definitely. You know, if we have an ambitious medical program, which we do actually, will help, you know, in, you know, eliminating the phenomena of people from the countryside visiting the major cities to visit doctors and major hospitals. I think with the new era of the network and the easy communications between, you know, between the major hospitals in each government, like in Giza and the villages that are scattered all over Giza government, for instance, it will be easy to communicate and consult the the senior doctors in the major hospitals, and this will make life very easy for the small clinics in the villages. So I know for sure that there is a net of fiber optic cables being laid in a lot of villages to ease the communication.
Yes.
Definitely this will help in the field of medical care.
Another purpose is economic empowerment. Job creation is not only, I mean, can we reach a stage whereby, and I know we discussed this on the show
times,
a number of times.
Right.
When are we going to reach self-sufficiency, whereby you can grow a crop and establish a factory right next to the field that can actually
use the crop as a raw material for that plant. Right.
Exactly.
Actually, this is what's happening in all the new areas, the Reef al-Masri, the new Delta, all of these new areas. The ground rule is to plant a certain plant that could be used as a raw material in industry, and the industry or the factory will be next to the areas where you grow the crops. I think there is a new philosophy, but in the old land, whether it's in Delta or in Upper Egypt, the task is bigger because you have an old fabric that you see that everything is settled for decades.
Yes.
And you're trying to solve the problems. You're trying to create jobs by really industrializing the areas. Meaning, if we grow onion, which is the thing, onion and garlic are the two main crops right now in the Egyptian fields, and the Egyptian farmer was
this
hoping,
season.
right?
Yes.
And the Egyptian farmer was hoping to gain some profit out of these two crops. Unfortunately, due to lack of communication and lack of supervision, the areas that were planted with onion and garlic were so big. So the plant, when harvest time came, the crop actually the prices fell down because you didn't need all that, and you did not have any means to use this in industry. So there should have been a drying factory for onion,
Yes.
turning it to powder or the dried onion, or same for garlic, export it to Europe. But maybe due to the political conditions in Europe, it's a little bit difficult. But again, lack of communication and lack of having a program that controls all this is causing a big headache for the Egyptian farmer. I think in the new areas, the Reef al-Masri and the new Delta, and all the new areas, you have large areas, and you can use new methods of agriculture. You can mechanize everything. But in the old land, due to the small ownership of land, you cannot really control the issue. And unfortunately, there is some absence for the role of the Ministry of Agriculture in supervising the areas that grow different crops. Also, there is a very important role that the cooperative agriculture should play, which is a very active establishment in Egypt. But so far, the responsibility of this particular organization is just to distribute fertilizer to the farmers.
Yes.
Hopefully, the role of this organization should be developed in the future, and it should actually work as a communication link between exporting companies and the farmers in the fields, eliminating the middle brokers that actually gain profit out of lack of communication between the end user and the product, the location of in the field.
One of the issues that the president was talking about recently is the fact that self-sufficiency when it comes to agricultural production. And he said that we're almost self-sufficient in everything now, and the plan is even to be self-sufficient in wheat.
Definitely.
How does Decent Life Initiative contribute to constructive use of agroland? How can it help in developing the agricultural sector, in your opinion?
You see, if what we call it contractual agreements between the government and the farmer through the organization of the Cooperative Agriculture Authority, this will actually help in improving the use of land, meaning, you know, at the same season where you grow wheat, you grow a large area of clover. And actually, we are not in need of clover as much as we need wheat. So I think there is a very important role which is coming up to improve the usage of agroland.
Yes.
I think in the very near future, using new methods of communication and supervision, it will improve the condition of the usage of agroland, actually.
Recent events around us, COVID, the war in Ukraine, and so many other events have highlighted how interdependent and dependent and fragile economies can be. How can we use an initiative like the Decent Life to ensure that Egyptians have a decent life in the wake of critical political
Conditions, yeah.
and otherwise conditions?
We're going to have to come up with new ideas and new crops, actually. Wheat, for instance, there is, which we are in great need of it, and this is the main crop that we, wheat and corn, are the main crops that we import in Egypt. So, and we're going to have to change the philosophy of growing wheat. There is a lot of crops or plants that could be a substitute to the wheat. There is a crop called cassava, which is very similar to the wheat and actually could grow in desert and you know, be able to resist salinity of water, which we might face in some areas in the western desert. We're not going to have to stick to the old crops. The sugar cane is a very, you know, hungry, very to water. It's a crop that is very hungry to water, and I think if we use stevia, which is a substitute to the sugar that is produced out of sugar cane, it will be beneficial. You know, we need a complete revolution in the agricultural field, actually, and new philosophies, actually. But all of this should go together with putting plants that will use the crops as a raw material, and be able to guide and train the Egyptian farmer to use you know, new methods of irrigation, better you know, methods of utilizing water, because we are in great need of water, and we still have a very ambitious program for agriculture. So new crops, new methods of agriculture, all of this requires the assistance of the government, actually. This is where the role of the government comes, because still the central government, whether in governorates or in the capital, still very much respected by the farmer, and the supervision of these programs are very much required in the coming future, if ever were carried out.
The purpose also is to develop individuals, empower them economically, help them set up small and medium enterprises, and set up art complexes, encourage crafts and art complexes. Can this be another form of encouraging local production? I mean, there are lots of old handicrafts, for example,
exactly, yes.
glass, brass. I mean, we have so many old traditional handicrafts that are very, very precious, but unfortunately are like going into
Declining,
extinction.
yes. Of course, definitely, we have a lot of handcrafts that could actually enrich the income of the Egyptian farmer if we train the new generations to refurbish and the old traditional industries. Palm trees, for instance. The palm trees, we all know that we only get date out of palm trees. But no, we get a lot of things, and we could even produce furniture, like the bamboo furniture that we use on the beaches and in gardens. We could really produce a lot of things from the palm trees. But it requires training, and it requires a location in the villages where you train young ladies or young men to be able to cope with this industry. Again, I think small and medium-sized industries are very much required in the countryside. Tomato juice plants, seasonal, which is seasonal actually, tomato juice plants in the countryside, a lot of things. We definitely need to utilize the good weather of Egypt and plant corn 3 times successively every year. You could grow the same crop 3 cycles every year and double the corn crop in Egypt. We need to be serious about the amount of money that we spend in importing such crops, and tie this with the amount of production that we have locally. We need serious and realistic figures so we can tie this to the agro-land and with our economical situation.
Egypt is hosting COP27 this year. One of the key factors in this initiative is environmental intervention, environmental awareness. How can we ensure that when we develop, not only do we develop things that look good, that are efficient, that are productive, but also environmentally safe, and introduce this culture, especially for the new generations? You irrigate, but take care of your water. You use pesticides or chemicals, but take care of the soil. How can we introduce that culture? How can we manage to incorporate this?
To be honest with you, I think training is the name of the game. Training and supervision in the open fields, having sessions for the farmers to. I used to host in my own farm sessions for the farmers to train them on growing grapes at one time. You need to, as the weather is changing as well.
Yes.
Suddenly, like a number of years ago, the mango crop in Egypt fell down due to the cold weather in winter, the sudden chilling weather in January and February. This affected the mango crop, for instance. And in summertime, also the high temperature affected the. So actually, you need to train the farmers to use the right material to protect their crops with no excessive use. So any excessive use of these materials and these chemicals could result the rejection of our crops in foreign markets. So we're going to have to supervise and train. Train is the name of the game if the Egyptian farmer is really keen to export his products.
What do you think is needed to be added to the Decent Life initiative to ensure that it achieves what is actually needed on the ground?
I'd like to see a more active role to the local governors in the areas, where I would like to see a small company formed out of the young people in each village to collect garbage and recycle it.
Recycle it. Okay.
And develop, a fertilizer out of that waste. If it's organic, it separates the organic waste aside. Paper is definitely, there is a market for used paper and plastic and so forth. I would like to see, new activities in these villages. I would like to see a bureau that actually you can go to this bureau and actually ask for labor, and each I require a number of laborers. They contact these laborers in the village and they send them to the different farms. So it requires some management, a lot of management. Once you establish a system and you create jobs for young people in the villages, packing of the different products. There is a lot of activities that are missing. A lot of the Egyptian crops are wasted in the fields before, right after harvest, before they get out of the field, because of bad methods of harvest and lack of experience in packing. We need a lot of training, we need a lot of equipment, we need a new technology, we need a new philosophy. When we talk about provide education in the countryside, we don't mean to everybody will get a PhD, but at least they will be educated enough to cope with the new technologies.
It's part of the initiative, educational development.
Right. So this is what I hope to see in the Egyptian countryside.
Decent Initiative, it's a program that aims at developing, it's a social reform program, aims at developing the Egyptian rural person. How will we see 10 years from now? How will the new generation come out with a program like that, in your opinion? How will it be different?
As I said, a lot of the young generation in the countryside actually is not really enthusiastic about working in the fields. But once you create new activities related to agriculture, this might attract these young people. Also, the big hope is to connect the new villages in Delta and Upper Egypt with the new developed areas in the Western Desert, in the Rif al-Masri or the new Delta, whatever. Meaning, if I have a village in the Delta, I should have a twin village in the opposite side of the Delta in the desert. These two villages should be treated like twins. This is the relief village to the old village. So actually you give advantage.
The Damietta and the new Damietta.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
you want this example to be replicated
Right.
in all the
Everywhere.
villages.
Because you're trying to protect the wealth of Egypt, which is the agroland. And everybody is building on this agroland. So you're going to have to create a substitute or an alternative.
How can you
for that.
encourage the farmer? Because there was a time when it was beneficial and cost effective to grow, to be a farmer. And other times whereby farmers felt it was not lucrative enough. So they started to turn into other business and they built their lands. How can you regain the momentum of it's beneficial to grow? And how can we consolidate efforts between farmers to grow larger plots of the same crops, especially strategic crops?
Let me put it this way. The problem, as I said, is that you do not have a program. And the farmer is always optimistic. He actually will grow a certain crop. And suddenly he will face the problem that he cannot market the crop. So, and the prices will fall down. Unless the government, in cooperation with the Farmers Bank and whatever side from the farming and
related
agriculture,
entities,
will contribute to this. You're going to have to create industries in the different governorates to absorb the extra crop that actually that causes the flooding of the market. So the onion, you're going to have to create a factory to dry onions, and this will absorb all the extra crop that actually floods the market and causes the low prices of onion. You're going to have to realize that the price of a crop in the field, it has nothing to do with the price of this crop that actually the shops or the supermarkets sell to the consumer. Have nothing. Let me put it this way. Today, the price of onion is £1 per kilo, for instance. But you buy it for £6 in the supermarkets. So,
or more.
Or more. So actually, who is suffering from all of this is the
go-between, the farmer, and who's benefiting? The go-between.
Yes.
And the end user is also, the consumer is suffering.
Right, exactly. So actually, if you want to control the price, which is the duty of the government, they're going to have to help the farmer to, feel that he's being protected. I think creating industries to absorb the extra crops, potato crops, tomato crops, onion, garlic, all of these crops requires industries to absorb the extra amount of crop that causes the flooding of the market, that causes the collapse of the prices in the market. You're going to have whatever I'm going to...
Should we have specialized cities? For example, we do have it in some areas. You have an area known for furniture or wood, like Damietta, for example. You have areas known for textile.
For the sugar in Upper Egypt or in Kafr Sheikh.
Can we have this governorate is famous for so and so? Can we develop this, but reunite the small
industries? Yes, exactly.
industry? I mean, you can have a piece of farm, I can have a piece of farm, but it does not mean that we cannot consolidate efforts and grow the same crop, and maybe even make use of the same machinery or facilities, which is, I would assume, would be cheaper even, or more cost effective.
You're going to have to go back in history. Why did Talat Harb establish these factories in Mahalla Kubra? Because, this is where the cotton
was growing. Yes.
So actually, the philosophy of what you're saying should be applied all the time. I mean, with new technology, use the solar energy to produce electricity to operate these factories. You have mobile equipment to turn the tomato crops into juice in the field and take them in tanks to the farm, to the plants where you turn them to sausages, to ketchups, whatever. So actually you need to change the philosophy, and you need to train the farmers to accept, because anything new that you impose in the countryside will be resisted for some time till it becomes part of the new culture. So my own experience that anything new in the farming technology always is not really appreciated till the farmer gets used to it. And I would like to also to see that, for instance, if the government is encouraging the farmer to turn to modern ways of irrigation, like dripping hoses and so forth, I think the farmers in Egypt and the farmers syndicate should actually have a share in new factories that uses the old tires. For instance, the rubber that in the old tires to melt it and use it as a raw material to produce the dripping hoses. I would like also to see that the government is reducing the taxes on the irrigation, the modern irrigation equipment. It doesn't make sense that the farmer still pays 14% if he turns his land to modern irrigation. If he goes and buy the new equipment, he will pay 14% taxes, and this is a high rate actually. I would like to see also, I think with the new discoveries of gas, I think we need about at least 2 more fertilizer plants, the ammonia and nitrates. I would like to see more plants that produces sulfur. And the magic material that we all in the countryside love and use all the time, the potassium.
Yes.
And I think it could come from the Lake Karun in Fayoum. Instead of throwing the brine water into the lake, and the salinity of the lake eliminated almost all the life, the natural life in the lake. I think this brine water could be used to produce potassium, which is a very important substance to the Egyptian farmer. I would love to see a cheap potassium, and this will improve the agriculture conditions. Also, I think, of course, there is a jump or a leap actually in the chemical industry in regard of the chemicals that are used in agriculture. There is a good plant in Dahshur and in Abu Rawash. They actually produce a lot of the chemicals that the farmer requires, and I hope in the near future we will be able to produce all the chemicals that we require in the agro activity.
How can we encourage the young people? Because generation after generation is being raised to escape rural Egypt. How can we reprogram the mentality, if we can put it that way? How can we change the culture, go back to the old ways whereby, regardless of where you're educated, for example, you come back and you help in developing your village or
Actually, many moons ago, we proposed an idea that in the new areas when you cultivate the new areas and establish new villages and new industries, and in order to attract the young generation to go and work in these areas, especially the young people who do not have financial resources to buy land or anything. But you can offer them always a job and a share in the profit of, a share in the company, 2 shares, 3 shares, whatever. If he could buy a share in the, but it's a shareholding company, and part of the shares should be owned by the young people who will work in the company, and the company should provide them with houses, retrain them to work in the company in new jobs, that these jobs might not have anything to do with their education that they got earlier in universities or whatever. But you need to change the career. You're going to have to attract these people. They want to establish a family, create a family. They need to have an income that they can rely on. Also, if they own a share in this government, they will work harder in order to come up with a profit that could be divided among the shareholders. I think there is a new philosophy, or there should be a new philosophy to encourage the people to go and risk going to these new areas, a new house, a share in a company, a new job, whatever. You're going to have to create some dreams. So these people will try to fulfill their dreams by accepting these new jobs.
The Decent Life Initiative is an initiative that is developed mostly by the government. Yeah, around 20 ministries, and NGOs are helping in the implementation on the ground. The role of the private sector, in your opinion, especially since recently the President addressed clearly the need in the coming phase to have a healthy relationship between the public and private sectors to build Egypt in the coming phase?
I think the Ministry of Industry and the Ministry of Agriculture should have a list of their required industries and their required crops. And this should be known to the private sector. If the private sector will go into business and establish new industries, this is what we require, 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the items. If you build a plant that actually produces the certain product, we will stop importing dog food, for instance.
Yes.
Shame that we actually still import dog food, cat food, which is we are a country that cannot afford this luxury, but still we could produce products to block the gaps in certain industries that makes our budget bleeds a lot. Also in agriculture, the same. I think there should be a cooperation between agriculture and industry, meaning that we import a lot of sugar still, though we produce sugar, but still, I think
we consume a lot.
We should actually have a program to have a new crop, the stevia, which is a crop that grows very well in Egypt, and it goes into all the soda pop industry, desserts and so forth. It might have an aftertaste if you use it as a sugar, white sugar, but again, it's medically it is recommended for diabetes, ideas,
yes.
Purposes. So you need to have a realistic program. Tie your needs to what you grow, and try to be self-sufficient. I mean, unless you do this, you will always have a problem in in your hard currency, and your, it's not really a very healthy way of, running an economy.
Engineer Hassan Shaaban, thank you very much for your fruitful input. Wish you a very pleasant evening. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers. We'll see you same time next week. Until then, good night.